Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. It is a, here we are. We're recording this. We're time traveling a little bit on this episode. It's the day before Halloween, but pieces of this episode have been recorded all over the place. My name is Jeff Sharon. Along with me is Brian Murphy. Hello, Brian.
Hello, Jeffrey.
We are talking to you right now on Wednesday night, and there are pieces of this podcast that were recorded earlier today, and it's all over the place. But we do have a stacked show for you today. We have Dustin and Sam. You know them combined as the Scott and Holman, the hosts of the Scott and Holman Podcast. Pawdcast, P-A-W-D, covering the Houston Cougars. They join us to talk about the Cougs coming into the space game, and then we talk a little bit later. Eric Lopez is going to join me. And we're going to talk about what was a big week for the Olympic sports for UCF, especially men's soccer, as they're all the way up to number 6 in the country. And he did an interview with Travis Clark of Top Drawer Soccer. Very, very big interview there. Really great insight on what's happening in the men's soccer. In the men's soccer field right now. So we have that and plenty more. But Brian, we're going to talk about football. First of all, how was Philadelphia? Did you get any cheesesteaks thrown at you for wearing that Giants hat?
I did not get any cheesesteaks thrown at me. Actually, I got some Philly fans, heckling me in the airport, which was the worst it ever got. So if that's the worst it ever got, then it was fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
I did, however, indulge myself. I decided after the game against Temple, to go from there to Geno's at about 1:30 in the morning.
And it was open.
It's because it's open 24 hours.
Yep.
Because Geno's and Pat's open 24 hours. And again, I went there because I'm a tourist and I go to the touristy spots. I'm sure some of the Philly people will say that I should have gone somewhere else, but these are the places that people know. So I went there 1:30 in the morning. I talked to some lovely drunk people, and I saw a lot of people dressed in costumes because it's Halloween weekend, or whatever last weekend.
A week early, but hey, whatever.
Yeah. So I mean, just to soak it in after a 40-point victory in which UCF runs for 5,000 yards. It was nice to go out on the town at middle of the night, grab a cheesesteak with some people who were absolutely obliterated.
All right, with whiz or without whiz?
With whiz, onions. It was okay. I like the gooiness. Is really good. It was pretty gooey. I like that.
Yeah,
the steak
it's got to be
chopped.
like a consistent. It's got to be homogeneous in the mixture, right?
Yeah, I mean it's okay. It's pretty good, but the steak isn't chopped. It's sliced, which is like I'd rather have my steak chopped. But the onions were good. The bread, I guess also talking to some locals there it's supposed to be chewy. I didn't know that, but like the bread's chewy, which is kind of weird. Anyway, whatever. When in Rome, eat a sandwich.
Well, the good thing is you got that after a UCF victory. Probably the most impressive win for UCF, I would think, on the season. Certainly since the Stanford game. 63 points on Temple. And before you say, well, it's Temple, no. Temple's a good football team. They came into that game 5-3. Let's just put a bow on that game just real quick for you. I mean, we talked about how good the the offense was in the second half. They scored 35 unanswered and held Temple to what was Temple's total yards in the second half? I think was it 19 total yards in the second half that they had?
19 total yards. That is correct.
That's unbelievable when you really get down to it. I mean, even in a game where you've got garbage time, to hold a team to 19 total yards in one half of play is really astounding. And there really wasn't that much magic to it. It was just UCF running the football and the occasional play action deep threat, and Dylan Gabriel was pretty good. We did see some Darryl Mack in there. He threw a touchdown. Gabriel was 10 of 20 for 218 and 3 touchdowns. But this was all about the run game and Otis Anderson, wasn't it?
Yeah, and not only just Otis. I mean, first of all, Otis tops 2 bills, goes for 205 on just 17 carries, which is kind of nuts. But also Bentavious Thompson rolling for more than 8 yards a carry. And really, though, just watching that game, the lanes that those two had able to run through were gigantic. I mean, the offensive line absolutely dominated from snap to finish, first snap to last snap. It's an amazing display against what you said, Jeffrey, a good Temple defense who plays pretty well at home too, and they absolutely mauled them. It was an amazing display of just overpowering, dominating, and at the end point really basically forcing Temple to quit. I mean, you could tell in that third and fourth quarter that they had enough.
Yeah, that was really, I think you hit the nail right on the head with the offensive line. They deserve so much credit. You know, Beno Thompson had the 2 touchdowns. Like you said, 89 on 10. UCF averaged 8 yards per carry on 48 rushing attempts, 403 total yards rushing. Adrian Killens averaged 13 a carry. Anderson on 17 carries, like you were saying, he averaged 12.1. I mean, like that's video game stuff. And more importantly, UCF gets a much needed road win in conference. They're now 6-2, 3-1. You know, even after the uneven performance last week against ECU, well, in the eyes of some, uneven. How badly did they need a game like this?
Badly. I mean, I think they were sick of hearing about all the questions of what needs to happen differently on the road, what needs to happen differently in the third quarter, why can't you guys do this better? They were pretty sick of that, I'm sure. I'm sure they were as sick of it as we were sick of it, of asking about it. But the fact was that up until this point, UCF had really struggled on the road against pretty good teams. And this is not counting FAU, certainly. But against Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, you saw that offense really go dormant for long stretches. And you feared that this could kind of be the same thing against Temple at home, a team that played pretty good defense coming in. And just the way to see they so seamlessly operated on offense was really eye-opening to watch. And then defensively, they pressured Anthony Russo all game long, got a couple of picks, although I will say on both of Aaron Robinson's picks, credit to him for getting the interception. But however, those picks were created by pressure and Anthony Russo the quarterback was making just awful throws, really bad throws, right to guys, right. Like Aaron Robinson will not get many easier picks in his life than those 2 picks that he got in that game. But it just goes to show they were pressuring the quarterback all game long. They completely neutralized Raymond Davis, the freshman running back from Temple, who would come in averaging 90 yards a game. They shut him down for 12 for 26, although Davis was banged up throughout the game with some lower body injuries. But still, the defense was just incredible basically after the first couple of drives. I mean, really after the first couple of drives. The first drive, Temple goes down and scores almost right away. And you're like, well, here we go. We got a big game in our hands. And it was pretty much from there, they just sort of rolled.
Yeah, it was after that first TD for Temple, it was punt, 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 downs. Then they scored on that long touchdown pass on a busted coverage, basically.
No, it wasn't a busted coverage.
Oh, it wasn't a busted? Oh, okay.
That was Brandon Mack, the receiver for Temple, absolutely out-physicaling and then outrunning Zamari Maxwell. He really kind of ate Maxwell's lunch on that play. He caught the ball pretty much in trap. It was a good throw, but the coverage wasn't awful. And then Maxwell tries to tackle him. Mac just ends up pushing Maxwell away.
He just stiff-armed him for about 20 yards downfield. I remember, I remember.
And then just runs away from him. It was a great play by Brandon Mack.
And then the third Temple touchdown was kind of it wasn't kind of a self-inflicted wound. It was a self-inflicted wound on kind of Otis Anderson's worst play of the day, where he muffed that punt. And perfectly fine to forget that because of the game that he ended up having. But that was a mistake. It led to another Temple touchdown. But after that, it was punt, downs, interception, punt, game over. And in the second half, Temple did not get more than 11 yards in any one drive. And that was utterly dominant performance. Let's give some credit also to Randy Shannon, man, because whatever adjustment he made in the second half, oh boy, it worked. And it was good to see. That was a big confidence builder. Just in time for a game against the Houston Cougars, the space game this Saturday. So ESPN2 will be the place for it. Noon kick. Beth Mowens, Anthony Becht, Rocky Boyman will be doing the game for ESPN2 at Spectrum Stadium. Of course, Dana Holgerson making his first trip as the head coach of the Houston Cougars to Spectrum Stadium. The Cougs are 3-5, 1-3 in the American. We're gonna talk to Dustin and Sam from the Scott Holman Podcast in a little bit. UCF is a 21.5 point favorite. That's down from the open at 22.5. Over under is 71. Mostly because I think quite a few people thought that even that was too high, considering what Houston's done. Considering it is Houston, but they have struggled this year. Their only wins are against Prairie View, at North Texas, and they did have a couple of close calls this year. They're coming off of pushing SMU up against the wall, but ever since De'Aaron King left, it's kind of been, this is clearly a rebuilding year for the Cougs. What are we going to make of this one now? Are you a believer in that number, 21.5 right now?
I kind of am, considering the way UCF has operated at home and the way the Houston defense, really, you can run on them all day long, and that's what this offense is going to do. So I kind of believe on it. I'm not saying that I would take it. I think I might actually go – I would probably still go Houston, plus 21.5, but it would probably be more like a backdoor cover because I think this game is probably over again by halftime or middle through the third quarter.
Yeah, so at quarterback for the Cougars is Clayton Toon, who's thrown for 715 yards this year, five scores, 4 picks in 3 games since taking over for De'Aaron King. What have you seen of Houston to this point? I've watched them a couple games. I watched them against SMU. I thought that was pretty much their kind of Custer's last stand, if you will. They knew they could spoil SMU's season. That would be big for them, in a game in the state of Texas, and it didn't work out. And I don't know what we're going to see from this team. They could come out gangbusters here and think, and with a little bit of confidence, guys playing for their jobs, or they could, I don't know. We could see a team that, if UCF scores quickly a couple of times on, they could mail it in, don't you think?
Guys playing for their jobs. I don't know what that means in college, especially with a team.
Yeah, well, if you're an underclassman, I would say you still want to get good tape on there. You don't want to show complete lack of effort out there.
No, I understand. I just think that I do worry about the letdown factor. Even though they'll have 10 days to prepare for this game, that game against SMU was on a Thursday. I do worry about the letdown factor of coming so close to having something to be positive about in this really down, awful season, and then it slips through their hands in the last couple minutes. Yeah. So now they got to UCF for a noon kick where it's going to be hot in November. Please, God, fall, please show up. I do worry about that. They're offensively, they're still going to spread you out and be multiple. They're going to do a lot of gadget stuff. Kind of the Dana Holgerson stuff. I just don't like we've talked about already. With the guys that they're redshirting, they don't really have the talent, I think, offensively to keep up with UCF, and then defensively they can really be a sieve.
Yeah. By the way, the weather is looking a little dicey. High of 83, at least right now, according to the forecast I'm looking at. High of 83, low of 68, 40% chance of showers in the afternoon. So I don't know.
But granted, 40% chance of rain is like that's like a filler forecast for Florida.
Friday will be nice, high of 77. Sunday will be nice, high of 77.
Wow.
I mean, it's kind of it's trying to reach you, Brian. It really is.
About time. It's almost November. God.
So, stick around on the podcast because coming up next we will talk with, like I said again, Dustin and Sam from the Scott Holman Podcast to get a little bit more insight on UH. A couple quick questions I had for you, or actually maybe one or two here, Brian, before we finish up this segment and go to that. Adrian Killens. Saw him with the sling on his arm, earlier. He's expected to play, right? So he should be okay.
The word on Monday was that Heupel expected him to practice this week. He did not practice on Monday, but he was expected to practice this week, and then he was expected to play on Saturday. We will talk to Heupel on Thursday, see what he says about that. But I feel like there is a lot of optimism that Adrian will be back in the lineup.
And then anything on Greg McCrae or anyone else who's been out of it, at least for the moment?
So not officially. I think I can say this. Today, after our practice availability today, I was sitting in my car, which is kind of right in front of the Student Athlete Leadership Center. It's where I park every day before I go in to talk to players and coaches. So after practice regularly, I come back out. And I'm cutting video clips to post on Twitter and writing tweets and stuff like that. So I kind of sit out there and I'm just in my own world. I'm not looking for anybody. I'm not stalking anybody. I want to put that out there now as I lead into this story.
Listen to this, Dan Frisella. Okay,
yeah, I know.
Murph does not stalk.
Because now I'm gonna get in trouble because I feel like I saw something that no one wanted me to see. But I did see Greg McCrae today walking to the Student Athlete Leadership Center. He has a soft brace over his right knee. It's not a full-length leg brace. It's just covering basically his knee up to about his high shin. And he's walking with a very substantial limp. He's kind of dragging his right leg right now. So I certainly would not expect him to play in this game. And I would not, I don't know what Heupel's going to tell us. I'm sure it won't be much. But just from what I saw today, it sure looks like Greg's a long way off.
Okay. All right. But other than that, at least it seems like everybody else seems to be in pretty good straits, right? And, I know the offensive line suffered some injuries against ECU too, but
yeah, but they all came back. So you had Sam Jackson didn't start against Temple, but did come in later. Cole Schneider did start and played great. Randy Charlton makes his return, gets 2 tackles and a tackle for loss against Temple.
Has anyone divulged anything about that?
So Nate Evans, a couple of weeks ago, during the bye week actually, Nate Evans let it slip that Charlton was sick. That was as most as he would say. I'm not even sure if he was allowed to even say that. But he did say he was sick. If you want to guess what sickness would keep a person out for 3 weeks, including not being around the team for 2 weeks, you can go ahead and make your own judgments. And then we tried to request to talk to Charlton this week, and we're told that he is not available. I don't know when we will get to talk to him. Maybe never, unless he has like a huge game. But if anyone's out there asking me like, why haven't you talked to Randy? Where's he been? What happened to Randy? Like, I wish I knew. I don't know, and we are not allowed to talk to him.
Yeah. Well, play the Unsolved Mysteries music, right? The Unsolved Mystery of Randy Charlton. Well, at least he's back around the team, and we'll be seeing him on the field soon enough. So, once again, 12 noon Saturday, the Space Game. The great uniforms are out there. They're a hit. The Citronaut stuff is out there. It's great. And UCF's a 21.5-point favorite. noon on ESPN 2. UCF against Houston. All right, before we go, a little acknowledgement. Some sad news came across our desk this afternoon on the death of former UCF offensive coordinator Charlie Taaffe. Taaffe was a football lifer, longtime offensive assistant at multiple places, head coach in 2 countries, coached in the CFL and in college in the United States. Was at UCF as the offensive coordinator from 2009 to 2014, and really, according to me and according to the numbers, was instrumental in the basically the resurgence of the UCF offense. I wanted to credit UCF Sports Info on Twitter for this. He came up with this graphic. Compared George O'Leary's records with Charlie Taaffe and without Charlie Taaffe. Without Charlie Taaffe, George O'Leary coached UCF teams were 26-44, 2 winning seasons and 1 conference title. With Charlie Taaffe, 55-24, 5 winning seasons in 6 years, 3 conference titles and 5 bowl games, including the Fiesta Bowl. And go back and take a look at those teams from 2009 to 2014, and you see a team that figured out an identity on offense and ran with it. To the tune of obviously the crowning achievement, 12-1 in 2013, and the win in the Fiesta Bowl. The development of Blake Bortles, the development of players like Latavius Murray, putting them in positions to be good largely through, and of course all the offensive linemen, largely through the creativity and the coaching acumen of Charlie Taaffe. He coached at a number of different places: Virginia, Army, was the head coach at the Citadel for 10 seasons, went to 3 FCS playoffs there, won a SoCon there, then went to Canada, coached the Montreal Alouettes for 2 years, lost in the Grey Cup championship game there, offensive coordinator under Ralph Friesian in Maryland from 01 to 05, OC at Pittsburgh before he went back to the CFL and the Hamilton Tiger Cats for 2 years, and then finished at UCF. He won the Eddie Robinson Award in 1992, and an incredible year. He died. His family said that he succumbed to a brief battle with cancer at the age of 69, and we're certainly thinking of everyone whose life he impacted at UCF, from the players and the other coaches, also of course his friends and family, not just inside of football but outside of football as well. Did you ever have an interaction with Charlie Taaffe, Brian, when you were around?
I think I did, because so I graduated in 2009, and so I was probably covering football that spring, probably his first spring. So I was not around for really most of his career. By that point, I had already left. But I did. I mean, you watch from afar and see, like, wow, this doesn't look like the thing I've been watching for the past 5 years.
Right.
Because anybody who wants to attest, for a while, this offense. I mean, well, again, we're all spoiled now with what's happening offensively for UCF, but back in those days, it
was rough going there for a while.
in the late aughts, it was not pretty, and it was contentious, and you had coaches throwing coaches under the bus, and Charlie Taaffe comes in there, and like I said, it's a resurgence, it's a resurrection. He turns this program, which was moribund offensively, into a Fiesta Bowl winner that was able to outscore Baylor. And at that time, there was no way you saw that possible, because Baylor could not be stopped. And UCF outscored them because Charlie Taaffe's offense. Again, like I said, Jeff, a 2-time Coach of the Year up north in Canada with Montreal Alouettes. And then, the Eddie Robinson Award recipient in 1992 for the best coach in the FCS, 2 years after Gene McDowell won that also award for UCF. But really, again, Taaffe's legacy here at UCF is a guy who was beyond instrumental in turning this program around. And although there were certainly doldrums after he left, it could have been a lot worse in between. and we would not have the Fiesta Bowl win over Baylor if it wasn't for Charlie Taaffe. That is a certain fact.
Yeah. So it's sad. I had the opportunity to meet him. I think it was actually once, and we heard from him in a couple of media availabilities, but met him once right when he was hired, and was a quality dude, and it was a real. He had a little bit of a stint on the UCF radio crew right after he retired, and you could tell that he was a savant of the game, and so our hearts go out to once again his family and friends and everyone at UCF who interacted with him as a truly great coach and a great person, and so our thoughts and prayers are with the Taaffe family tonight. And we thank Charlie for all that he did for UCF in his time as offensive coordinator, and may he rest in peace. So we're going to take a break, and when we return, we will continue to break down the Houston game with our friends from the Scott and Holman Podcast, covering the University of Houston when we return. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, and we're back after this. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, and joining us now to talk about the Houston Cougars, UCF's opponent this week in the annual Space Game, one of our favorite traditions around here. You can find them at SH Pawdcast on Twitter. That's PAWDCAST. Your source for Houston Cougar athletics, the best podcast out there on the Cougars. From the Scott and Holman Podcast, please welcome Dustin and Sam joining me right here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. What's up, fellas?
Hey, not too much. Just ready to hopefully see an Astros win tonight and the Cougars win this weekend if we're real lucky.
I was going to say, how's the traffic on the way from Austin to Houston right now for Game 7? We're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, so I'm sure it's starting to fill up already, isn't it?
So far, not too bad, but I'm going to knock on wood as I say that because Austin traffic and the Houston traffic we're about to get in a little bit, in a couple hours here, is notoriously bad. So if it's good, it's only very temporary, I'm sure.
I hear you. All right. Well, first of all, stay safe out there. And while the Texas roads are still open and clear, let's talk a little football real quick. So the Cougars come into Orlando as 22-point underdogs. It's a weird year this year under Dana Holgorsen in his first season, 3-5, and obviously the whole. Let's start with this. All right, the whole flap this year about D'Eriq King and sort of the spoken or unspoken, I guess, for lack of a better term, tanking that Houston's undergoing right now. Are they really doing that? What is the story behind what is going on with the Cougars this year under Dana?
Yeah, so we've used the word tanking a little bit too, but we've kind of started pushing back against that a little bit, just because I think, if we're being technical, tanking is you're wanting to lose, and because you get some benefit from losing. So Houston is neither trying to lose nor are they really getting a benefit from losing, but certainly, by having D'Eriq back for next year, there's quite a benefit. It goes back to something that Sam and I were talking about from the moment Dana took over, which is like, oh wow, this defense, his first year, sure looks like it's going to be a year away. Obviously, the defense was pretty lousy, especially at the end of last year. If you saw Houston get steamrolled by Army in the bowl game, you probably know what I'm talking about. But we're saying, hey, this defense looks like it's still going to be a year away, but this offense sure looks like it's going for right now. D'Eriq King's going to be a senior this year. A lot of that, you may have heard some of the resentment coming from Coach Holgorsen about the fact that a couple of coaches ago, some coaches up in Austin now, D'Eriq King's first year on campus chose to play him in several games as a wide receiver instead of what he probably should have done for the long-term good of the program, which would have been to redshirt him then, and then we could have avoided this whole scenario. But yeah, coming into the year, we kind of knew, okay, the offense looks like it's going to be kind of senior-heavy and maybe reset next year, which is unfortunate because the defense looks like it's, with a lot of sit-out transfers this year, looks like it'll be pretty salty next year. And this was kind of the way to meld that into the best of both worlds, where the best of both worlds was, D'Eriq taking the rest of the year off and then coming back for next year. And it's something that it's certainly unorthodox. Certainly it's going to rub some people the wrong way. It already has. But really, I mean, when I heard the news, my first reaction to it was, I love it. My only concern is he going to transfer? Is he going to, grad transfer at the end of the year and go to Florida State to be with Kendall Browse again or something like that? But D'Eriq King seems pretty locked in on coming back, so it's definitely kind of a new thing going on. But, Houston has always been on the forefront, likes to be on the cutting edge in college football. So if we can be on the red shirt of, we can call it red shirt tanking, I'm okay with that. It still should lend to a pretty fun 2020 season next year.
Even given that, Houston's still 3-5 this year. Coming off the loss to SMU, which was, I watched that game from beginning to end, and I thought, I was really impressed with what Houston was able to do both in that game and in the game that you guys also lost to Cincinnati by 15. I thought that you saw some bright spots here and there, but you guys pushed the Mustangs and had them on the ropes really for that game. Is this the kind of effort that you kind of expect the rest of the way, or was that sort of a last stand for Houston this year as they head down the stretch?
I mean, we've seen this Cougar team play everyone except for the opener against Oklahoma quite competitively, and Oklahoma looks like they're one of the best handful of teams, or these best 10 teams in the sport this year, so I don't think you take too much negative away from getting pushed around by Oklahoma. In Norman, this team has been quite competitive every week, like you mentioned, against Cincinnati, played pretty well, threw a pick six at the end that makes the score look a little more lopsided than I think the back and forth of the action of the game really indicated. And that's why I think Dustin and I are pretty optimistic about the long term with this program, is because you see buy-in. You didn't see when Holgerson got here a bunch of players transfer out. There was one or two guys who were kind of fringier players leave the program or medically retire. The guys have really been bought in, even with kind of an unprecedented decision to redshirt a lot of these seniors looking ahead to 2020. The guys still seem engaged with the current season, even with a bunch of close losses. And I think if you're looking for the quantifiable reasons to be excited about the future of Houston, it's all the return production on both sides of the ball. If you're looking for the qualitative reasons, it's that the players seem bought in. The players haven't given up on a season that has been very difficult. Has a difficult schedule, has had all the off-field stuff, a lot of injuries too, when this team really didn't have the depth to absorb those injuries. So, yeah, I think you'll see this team play hard. I don't feel comfortable guaranteeing a lot more than playing hard, to be honest.
If this game is competitive on Saturday and it's going to be a noon kick, it's going to be warm, out in the sun. It's too bad, really, because we were hoping for maybe a night game for this game, like we've had the last few times in the space game. But if Houston makes this thing competitive, what's going to be the key? Who are going to be the key players who are going to make it competitive?
Well, I think we need to see something that we saw against SMU that we hadn't seen a whole lot of this season, which is finally some explosiveness on offense. Clayton Tune was making his third start. The stat we pointed out on our podcast this week, his first two starts, he had less than 200 yards passing. In the SMU game, he had 211 yards passing to just one receiver, Marquez Stevenson, who we kind of knew coming into the season was one of the most explosive offensive players on this team. The Cougars, with the mix at quarterback, even Derek King before he redshirted was really struggling to get the offense going. It was really exciting to see, just finding some explosiveness, some big plays. So a guy like Marquez Stevenson has to be able to make some of those plays. Clayton Tune is going to have to really probably do what he did against SMU again, because as Sam kind of alluded to with the injuries, the biggest place where those injuries have really hit Houston have been on the offensive line, where the last game against SMU, we only started one of the original 5 offensive linemen who were on the opening night offensive line. So Houston's been dealing with a lot of injuries there, playing a lot more underclassmen on the offensive line than they certainly want to. And that's with a true sophomore quarterback. That can be a tough thing to deal with. So Clayton Tune took 7 sacks in the SMU game, still managed to throw for over 400 yards of offense. And if Houston's going to be close, it's probably going to have to be something similar, because I don't imagine that against a pretty good UCF defense, Houston's offensive line isn't going to suddenly magically hold a clean pocket every time he drops back. So it's going to have to be Clayton Tune dealing with some pressure and still being able to find some guys to make some explosive plays like we saw on Thursday.
Yeah, and on defense for the Cougars too. I mean, I know that obviously it's been a real struggle. They're giving up 460 yards a game and 31 points a game as well. But as far as what we've seen over here at UCF is if teams are able to really key on the run and then pressure Dylan Gabriel up the middle, things get really wonky back there. I mean, he's a true freshman quarterback after all. So what's the outlook for Houston on defense heading into this game?
I think going into this year, just bigger picture, we wanted to see progress. We knew it wasn't going to all happen in one year. The Cougars are pretty deficient in some key areas. One of the things I've always repeated during the season is that it looks like we have one Division I cornerback. We have a couple of guys who are sit-out transfers right now, including Marcus Jones, who was an all-conference corner at Troy for a couple of years there when that program was doing real well with Neil Brown. And we've seen progress, I think. It hasn't been perfect. I think it's been a brutal schedule to try to build a new defense. You have Oklahoma, who looks pretty superhuman with Jalen Hurts, Washington State, who's kind of a torture test for a team with a super young secondary like the Cougars have, and SMU has a good offense. Who am I for?
Tulane on a third consecutive
Thursday
short
night, a short week. Tulane's had a really good-looking offense this year. And still, even with those torture tests, this has looked like a defense that's making progress, that keyword. Grant Stewart, who's kind of a nickel safety linebacker hybrid, is, I would say, the talisman of this defense. He's this guy who has super long hair. You'll see him pretty much the second the Cougar defense takes the field, kind of a Troy Polamalu-like looking figure out there, flying around the field, laying big hits, making more tackles than you think would be possible from his nickel position. And a couple other promising young guys I think we like. Jamarian Williams was the first big recruiting get of this coaching staff, was a JUCO All-American at Highland Community College in the Jayhawk League. Doug Belk and Dana Holgerson, within a week of getting here almost, pulled him from SMU at the semester start for last spring, and he's been great. He's gotten some really difficult matchups with CeeDee Lamb in Oklahoma, with James Brochet at SMU, Wazoo, and all they offer. And I think has acquitted himself quite well, all things considering. We have a couple promising sophomore linebackers, Donovan Newton and Samar Curvin, who I think is questionable injury-wise. So it's not perfect, but we've seen progress. This is a defense that held Shane Bichelle as in check as Shane Bichelle has been held the entire season. And I think other than some big plays, we're pretty close to, I think, holding SMU to, I think, too few points to win that game in Houston. But SMU being what they are, they broke a couple big plays. And, that's the progress. This isn't a perfect defense by any stretch, but it's a lot better than what we saw at the end of 2018 for sure.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that, you have to look at the way the season started. The season started at Oklahoma. Then the next 3 games are on 3 consecutive short weeks. We played on a Sunday, Saturday, Friday, Thursday. So a very short-handed defense had to do 3 consecutive short weeks after facing Oklahoma. So by the end of the Tulane game, you can see they were just absolutely gassed. And since then, it's against North Texas. I thought the defense mostly played pretty well. Against UConn, it's UConn. I don't know how much you can take away from that. And then against SMU this past week, held SMU to their season-low point total despite 2 quarterback fumbles that put them on a 2-yard field and a 32-yard field. So I was really impressed with the defense against SMU. And like Sam said, it's just it hasn't been perfect. Certainly we're hoping to see another step forward next year with all the sit-out transfers coming in, but we're seeing some signs that this defense can do some things well. And that's something that wasn't really the case a lot of last year.
There's just an identity.
Right. I want to talk about the state of Houston as a program in general. And, I've been asked before by fans, like, who do you think is our biggest rival? Is it really USF? And I said, from a geographic perspective, yes. But from a state of the program perspective, I look at Houston as really, really close to UCF in terms of where both programs are right now. Obviously, big metropolitan areas. There's a connection to the space program, which we're celebrating in this game here on Saturday, and it's something that UCF has done the last 3 years. But this is the first time that they've done it with in the game with Houston, of course, the home of the Johnson Space Center and Mission Control, and as you look at what Houston has been able to accomplish, how does Houston view UCF in terms of the greater landscape of college sports in general?
Yeah, we actually said something on our last podcast that we just recorded last night. We said something extremely similar where I said I think UCF is the most similar school in the country to Houston in terms of athletics, in terms of the size of the university, in terms of where it is inside of a major metropolitan area, a lot of the things that you just said there. So, yeah, I think that there's a lot of recognition within the Houston fan base that UCF is the closest thing to that, Spider-Man meme where they're both pointing at each other, and they both have fans that, if you're part of the fan base, it can be a lot of fun. If you're not part of the fan base, then and you spend much time on social media, maybe you don't find it you don't find that fan base nearly as much fun. Houston definitely has some people that can rub others the wrong way, as UCF sure does. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of kind of acknowledgement, and I think makes for a good, like what you call it. I think it can be a good rivalry. I think getting there, the longer we spend in the American, obviously, I think that's it's going to happen more and more. Houston, I think, needs to start doing a little better until we're looking a little better out in the West, the way that UCF has been out in the East last couple of years. It makes obviously for a less compelling rivalry, but I think that there's, anytime you have another school, another program that's as similar to yourself as these two schools are, you kind of have to. You have some mutual respect, but then you also have some animus as well that you always want to beat the other school that looks the most like you. So definitely, I think Houston fans respect UCF and what they've been able to accomplish going undefeated the last couple of regular seasons. And, that's the same goal Houston has. Houston wants to be that team that's going undefeated, that's the best team in the conference, that's going to the NY6 bowl games. And certainly we're looking at UCF as a program that right now, with a lot of our same kind of advantages and disadvantages, it has accomplished that the last couple of years. So I think there's definitely respect, but definitely, makes you want to go out and beat that team even that much more.
Well, now that the conflict is no longer a thing, at least within conference play, we need another rivalry trophy. How about we mint ourselves? You guys and me, we'll go down. We'll get a model Saturn V rocket or something, and let's make that a new rivalry trophy for UCF and Houston. You guys on board with this?
Absolutely, 100% co-sign.
This should be fun. Listen, I know you guys are on the road, but I wanted to thank you guys both, Dustin and Sam, from the Scott Holman Podcast covering the Houston Cougars. Real quick, give UCF fans the spiel. How can they reach out to you if they want to follow the latest on Houston football and basketball, because you guys cover basketball very tightly and with very good reason with how good the Cougars have been the last few years under Kelvin Sampson. How can folks follow you?
You can find us on Twitter, as you mentioned at the top, at SHPAWDcast. We love to interact with folks all over the AAC Twitter sphere. One of the many things I like about our current conference is I think we have our own kind of unique fan culture thing going, and that's great. As a couple fan bases that came from Conference USA, a conference that lacked many things, fan culture definitely included in that. It's been a breath of fresh air. For sure, we're also on Facebook for reasons we still don't exactly understand. You can search at the Scott Holman Podcast there. Find us. Even on Instagram, periodically posting at SH Podcast for all the Zoomers that are on Instagram, posting pics of food and whatnot. We're there as well. We're on your podcast app of choice. Search the Scott Holman Podcast, Stitcher, Apple, Google Play, Spotify. We're in all those places, SoundCloud.
Yeah, we just posted last night, or this morning rather, our episode where we talked to you, Jeff, and we had a really good time, enjoyed that. So if you want to hear our full unedited thoughts on the game, be sure to check that out.
Sounds good. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to join me here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Safe travels up to Houston. Enjoy Game 7 tonight, and enjoy Saturday as well, but hopefully not too much.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
I appreciate it. Always good to talk to you.
All right, thanks once again to the guys. Make sure you follow them at SH Pawdcast, Pawdcast on Twitter. Stick around. When we return, Eric Lopez joins me to talk about UCF men's soccer, women's soccer, and volleyball. And we're also joined by Travis Clark to talk about UCF men's soccer's chances as they approach the postseason, ranked in the top 10 in the country. We'll be right back. Stick around. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff, Sharon, joined now by Eric Lopez for our final segment, as Elo's been busy doing his softball Woj stuff. But we're going to talk a little bit about soccer here, and we'll start with men's soccer, as the picture is starting to come into focus, isn't it? UCF right now ranked number 6 in the United Soccer Coaches poll, highest ranking ever. Number 4 RPI, tied with their highest ranking that we've seen at least this season. And coming off that 1-0 victory on Saturday against South Florida, key win, and the Knights' first regulation game in 4 games. They got the job done at Corbett Soccer Stadium, and then came back home for another in-state rivalry game, if you will, against Stetson. This one was not easy on Tuesday night. Stetson had a 1-0 lead at halftime. UCF took the lead on an own goal by the Hatters, who then tied it up and sent it to overtime. And then Cal Jennings did it again in the second overtime, early in the second overtime, getting his 40th career goal. He had a goal and an assist in the game, and UCF gets the win over Stetson 3-2, Eric Lopez. And, a little bit of a nail-biter there because, now we're starting to talk about the postseason with 2 games to go, one at home Friday against Memphis in a critical game in the American race, and then the season finale on Tuesday at Cincinnati in the cold. That won't be easy, but this is a critical time right now for UCF men's soccer because any slip-up could be costly in the long run, right?
Yeah, no question. I mean, it's crunch time here from a national seed perspective, which we're going to talk about shortly with our guest here, special guest that we have. But let me just first say this. For those that are like, oh, my God, we struggle against Stetson. Stetson is probably going to win the A-Sun, and there's a good chance. I mean, they've had a good men's soccer program there, and there's a good chance these 2 teams might play again potentially, down the road here in the tournament. Who knows? Stetson's the type of team that could upset somebody if they were to make the tournament. They're a pretty good team, and, very fitting for Cal Jennings. 40th career goal, only the 4th guy to reach that milestone. He passed Ronnie Francois as far as 4th all-time in goals. He's now behind only Heike Rikveden, who played from 96 to 99, who had 88 goals, which is kind of crazy to say that, 88 goals. How did that happen? Were they playing
Cal's a senior? Yeah, Cal's a senior, and that's less than half what Heike Rikveden had.
I don't understand that. Like, was offsides banned back in the day in the 90s? I mean, did I miss something? And then Randy DeShield, who played from 75 to 79, 56 goals. And then Ari Nurmi, who also was a teammate of Heike, he scored 47 goals. How do you like that? You scored 47 goals and you got blown away by your other guy on the team. That's kind of wild. I mean, what a wild time in UCF soccer in the late 90s there. But the point is, we have not had a prolific goal scorer like Cal Jennings reach this milestone of 40 goals, and what a way to do it at clutch when they needed him the most. He always steps up. It seems like in these overtime matches that they've pulled out, he's either making the pass like he did against Tulsa or the game-winning goal like he did against Stetson. And what it does now, it sets up move forward to the biggest, senior night, but it's huge. Home Friday night against Memphis, the top 2 teams in the league. Memphis kind of the surprise of the league. Upset SMU earlier this year. We've talked about on this show about SMU and UCF, the top 2 teams. Who would blink? Well, SMU blinked when they lost to Memphis. Well, Memphis says, well, forget blinky. We're going to make UCF blink. They got a shot to win the league. And part of their banner year, they're only 1 point back of UCF. So this is a huge match on Friday night for UCF because the winner of this goes on top in first place and has control of the regular season title with 1 match to go. UCF would, as you mentioned, go into Cincinnati. So this Friday night match is huge match. The American Digital Network has picked it up, and this is going to set the stage for UCF because it gets them 1 step closer to potentially all their aspirations come the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and when you look at the standings, like you mentioned, so this is another way to look at it is this. So UCF has 13 points in the standings. Memphis is 12. SMU is 10. UCF is 4-0-1, so they and SMU share that tie, but SMU has that loss that they suffered to Memphis. So if UCF beats Memphis in this next game, okay, on senior night, that would put them up to 16 points. SMU has 2 games to go. By the way, you beat Memphis outright, then you have 16, they have 12. They can't catch you with 1 game to go. SMU has 2 games to go. They would need to win them both in order to tie, and then all UCF would have to do at that 16-point mark would be just get a point at Cincinnati, and then it's over. And then you're hosting the conference championship the rest of the way. So UCF right now is in the driver's seat, but Memphis is not going to go down all that easy. And then when we're talking about while we're here talking about what's going on with the conference, that's going to be critical too, as you discussed with our guest this week to talk men's soccer.
Yeah, you teased me as the softball Woj. Well, he's the soccer Woj, if you will. And I speak of Travis Clark, who is in charge, of course, of Top Drawer Soccer, one of the top sites in the country when it comes to soccer. In fact, he has his latest projections of the NCAA tournament. He does a bracketology as well for men's and women's soccer. I had a chance to talk to Travis Clark about what is the future for UCF and what's at stake for the Knights moving forward and the possibilities for Scott Calabrese's team come the 2018 field of the NCAA tournament, a possible destination to the College Cup. Here now is Travis Clark. And joining us now here on the Black and Gold Banneret, of course, he's the director of content at Top Drawer Soccer. They are the place to go for all information in every level of soccer, from college, pro, club, you name it. I speak of Travis Clark, who joins us now here on the show. Travis, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing great. Well, we're here talking about UCF men's soccer, another dramatic win for them on Tuesday night against Stetson. What a year for Scott Calabrese and company. I guess my first question before we get into what we kind of you project them to be in the postseason is, what's been your thoughts about them here in 2019?
Yeah, I mean, I think they had pretty high expectations heading into it, and they certainly have delivered in what is looking like a pretty competitive American Athletic Conference. You know, we saw Cal Jennings have his breakout year last year, and whenever I'm looking at college strikers, college forwards, college attackers, however you want to call it, it's always interesting to see how they live up to, you know, how do they deliver after a great season like he had. So to see him score so many goals again, you know, he's 12-14, not quite the same rate as last year, but it's certainly a big part of why they're having the same kind of success this season. I do think that the interesting thing for me is the number of overtime games that they've played. I believe it is 6, and they've won 4 of them. I don't think they've lost any of them. So, you know, there's talent up and down the field, though, as well, you know, whether it's Luis Perez, Yanni Sorokin, then you have Yannick Errol in goal. I got his name wrong there. My apologies. A couple of standout freshmen, too. One player that I'm glad to see back on the field, Vladimir Mendoza, who is a defender at the Real Salt Lake Academy, tore his ACL last summer at the Development Academy playoffs. Then went to New Mexico, which was discontinuing its soccer program. And I was wondering, where's this kid going to end up? Where's he going to be? So that was definitely a shrewd pickup by the coaching staff. Gianno Vivi, another freshman that's seen a lot of minutes. So there's talent all over the field, and it's been no surprise to see where they are, you know, number 4 in the RPI in the most recent ranking. So I do think that things are positive, and you might even want to go ahead and lump them into the national title challengers category. I think the one thing when you're looking at them is, can they slow down the best teams on defense? Conceding 18 goals in 14 games isn't that high of a mark, but that's my one sort of like, okay, how they can do in that sort of category will determine how long they play this year.
You know, it's funny you bring that up. We have a fan that messaged me, Trace, who's a diehard UCF fan, soccer, and actually asked that exact question. His concern is that they've been giving up leads defensively late, like they did against Stetson on Tuesday night. The SMU match, which I know you followed, that classic where they had a 2-goal lead and couldn't hold it. Even a Tulsa match, a match that I got to call where they were up 2-0 and they kind of coughed up the lead. Is that how big of a concern is that moving into the postseason? And you know, I've talked to them. They kind of feel like it's a situation where they just, for whatever reason, uncharacteristically kind of maybe relax a little bit. How big of a concern is that?
Yeah, you know, the old trope or cliche, right, is defense wins championships. So that is definitely a concern. I do think they have the attacking talent to obviously cope with it at certain points of the season, but a lot of what it might boil down to is how the bracket comes out and how, you know, do they finish in the top 4 and in the RPI, or do they get a top 4 seed, which means that if they win out up until the College Cup, they would host every game. They would have that, you know, they be at home and have that sort of advantage. But I do think it's the one thing they really need to address, and it's where the season will boil down to. You know, as a result that you've noted, it's kind of what has been the one, if you want to say negative, they've won all these high-scoring matches, but part of the reason is they've been conceding a lot of goals. So, if they're having a game where they're missing a bunch of chances and they can't keep that shutout at the end, that'll end their season. So I'm really interested to see how that impacts them, like I said, in the NCAA tournament, in the AAC tournament, which starts next week.
Of course, we're nitpicking about a team that Top Drawer Soccer, you guys have them ranked number 4 in the country.
It is definitely being very specific about an issue, but I think if they want to win the AAC tournament, if they want to get to the College Cup, which I think, like I said, in this sort of relatively open field in men's D1 soccer, it's very much a possibility if they can hold on to leads a little bit better.
No question. And they would be the first to agree with that. Coach Calabrese would be the first to agree with you. Let me ask you about Coach Calabrese. You follow the sport for a long time. This is in his 3rd season at UCF. He came, he's coached at other places. What did you know about Coach Calabrese before his arrival to UCF? Are you surprised how he's turned around UCF to being a number 4 ranked team in the country just in its 3rd season? What's your thoughts on Coach Calabrese?
Yeah, I didn't know a whole lot about him. That's nothing to do with him. That's more the sheer volume of coaches that have been out there. But it is always nice to see coaches that bring fresh ideas and are willing to blend recruits from all over the world to really build up programs. And I think that, what we've seen at UCF is just a reflection of his ability to, put a program together and, identify the way it needs to improve, what needs to get better on the field, and kind of make the right decisions, because college soccer is such a, I don't want to call it a crap shot, but it is it can be fluky. It's a short season. You can have an injury to a 1 or 2 players, and that can kind of kill your season, right? So I think the job that he's been able to do is reflective of, the kind of coach that he is and the freshness that he brought to the position. So I didn't know a ton about him before he got there, but I do think he's done an excellent job, and he certainly caught my attention with what he's done at UCF for sure.
Speaking with Travis Clark of Top Drawer Soccer here on the Black and Gold Banneret. Now, one of the great features you have at Top Drawer Soccer, again, you cover recruiting. You cover every level of soccer. It's fantastic. If you're a soccer fan, I strongly recommend to bookmark this site. It's your go-to place. I go to it. And one of the things I enjoy is you do a tournament projections. You got your own kind of bracketology, if you will, for both men's and the women's soccer. Just give us an idea what you kind of see as of this hour for UCF as they get set for a huge match against Memphis at home. Then they're at Cincinnati on the road, and we'll see. They kind of control their destiny as far as winning the regular season title. Remains to be seen if that happens. But where do you see them right now as far as your projections are concerned for UCF and the possible path they might have for the tournament? Because some of our audience may not be familiar with the format in the NCAA tournament in men's soccer. It's different than the other ones in that it's not a 64-team field.
Yeah, so it's a 48-team field, and what that means is the first round consists, and you can step in if I do my math wrong here. First round, you have 16 teams, and then the winners of those advance to the second round, and that's where you have all of the seeded teams come in. So they get a bye, basically a first-round bye. They host all the games on the Sunday. The NCAA tournament starts the preceding Thursday. So basically where UCF is, I think that it kind of depends on how the sort of ACC bias is factored in, which may rankle some ACC fans if they're listening. Maybe they're not listening, but the ACC teams tend to get a little bit more shine in pass. But UCF's RPI right now is number 4. I think that if they win either the regular season or the conference tournament, they can. I would be surprised if they are not in the top 4. So if you're in the top 4, as I kind of noted previously, they have the ability to host through the College Cup. I was assuming they win each round, College Cup being the national semifinals. I think that, again, this is a lot of guessing and kind of basing it off of what I have observed in previous years. I think as long as UCF doesn't crash out in maybe the first round, maybe they lose a hard luck penalty kick in the semifinals, I still think they should get a top 4 seed provided they had won the AAC regular season before. So I think if you grab one or two of those, you should see UCF in the top 4. Top 8 seems secure at this point, and then you never know how the committee is going to break down the field or shift things out. So I do think the team is in a good place no matter what happens. If they lose, like I said, college season can be short. You could lose your last 2 games. You drop games at Memphis versus Memphis and at Cincinnati. Things could be a little bit different within the span of a week, but as of right now, they are sitting pretty for sure in terms of being set up to host a significant amount of their games and then have that first round bye, as I said.
That's music. Trust me, you've won over a lot of fans, or a lot of fans are hoping you're right. I'm curious, where do you have SMU, who's become UCF's rival? They have played some classic matches. They played a classic regular season match in Dallas earlier this year, a 3-3 draw. They've played in the last 2 years in the American Conference Championship, both won by SMU. Last year in Orlando, they won in penalty kicks. 2 years ago in Dallas, SMU won in overtime. They got a great player, McLaughlin Company. Where do you have SMU seated?
So they'll be seeded as well, probably in the 8 to 12 range. It, again, depends on how they finish the season. If they pip UCF to either the regular season or conference tournament title, I could see them pushing up, maybe being higher than UCF. But they have the firepower. I think both programs could put together a deep run in the NCAA tournament, and it would be great, I think, for the conference, for college soccer, men's college soccer, to see the two hopefully square off in the final of the American Athletic Tournament, even though I know that with Memphis, where they are, I believe they're in second place.
Yep.
They could end up sort of throwing a wrench in those plans depending on how UCF's game goes against Memphis. So I'm interested to see those two programs go head-to-head, hopefully, once again. But if they don't, both teams have a good chance of really flying the flag for the conference in the NCAA tournament.
That's pretty amazing for the American Conference. It's the first time they've had 2 top 10 teams in the country. It's a young league. Where does the American stack up as far as the league, as far as college men's soccer is concerned? UCF SMU looks like top 8 seeds. I don't know what your thoughts are in the rest of the league as far as NCAA tournament bids. Maybe a Memphis. Do they have a shot to get in? Where is the American in 2019? It's
definitely in a much more advantageous place than it has been previously. Just the fact that there are a handful of teams, not just UCF. Well, you have UCF and SMU as top 10, top 15 caliber teams. Memphis and Temple, even Temple has a pretty solid RPI. They just picked up a big win against Louisville. So I'm curious if Temple can finish out the season with a couple more wins, maybe secure an upset against an SMU, Memphis, or UCF in the conference tournament. There's a chance that you could have 4 teams in the tournament when it's all said and done. You never really know what's going to happen. The geography can factor into things sometimes, but I do think it's been a banner year for the American, especially, when you consider UConn has been the premier power when it's moved in, and they're obviously going to be leaving, as far as I understand. So, especially with them having such a down year, for these 4 programs to step up and to really put together strong seasons, it bodes well for the conference. And I'm curious to see when it comes to men's soccer, which of the programs can maintain it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's just fascinating to see the American in this kind of level here, and with 2 teams that are potentially teams that could flirt and be a threat to get to the College Cup in North Carolina down the road. And obviously that's why it's very significant how this regular season ends, as you know, because you mentioned Memphis and UCF first place on the line. Memphis is actually the spoiler. They're currently in second place. They upset SMU during the season. SMU still lurking, and we don't know who's going to host the conference tournament, which is significant. And it's a big. That's what makes that match so big, because it could help kind of direct the path as far as to win that conference tournament championship, and in UCF's case, potentially lock up a top 4 seed.
Yeah, I mean the stakes are big, and again, that makes the business end of the season, of the college season, can be quite boring, or it can be totally unpredictable and very exciting. So it's nice to see that's materialized. And again, the more programs you have that can be competitive, even if it means that your team loses a game or 2 that you don't necessarily expect or usually fall to, it can make for some exciting things on the field.
You mentioned earlier it's a wide open field this year. How wide open is it as far as the national? How many teams can realistically win the national championship? UCF opened the season with Wake Forest, who a lot of people picked before the season. Wake Forest won that match. UCF then beat North Carolina and North Carolina. There's been obviously a revolving door. How wide open is the field this year?
I think it's pretty wide open. We've seen Stanford kind of dominate the past few seasons, and they're still thereabouts. Obviously they didn't make it, and Maryland did, and it's hard to say really. You could be as ambitious and say that within 10 to 15 programs could be within striking distance, could put together a run. You're looking at the top. I'll just rattle off some names, and maybe that'll give us. I've already said SMU and UCF, CF2, and Washington is having a great year in the Pac-12. Georgetown looks like a dominant force in the Big East. Virginia is a very, very difficult team to beat. Clemson has the highest scoring offense in the country. Even Maryland, while they've had their ups and downs, and I wouldn't really throw them in a contender category, have had some nice wins and good moments. There's the Stanford Cardinal. If you want a shock team, St. Mary's out in California has a one-loss season after going unbeaten last year. You already mentioned Wake Forest. I think even St. John's, while they got dominated in a Big East game by Georgetown, could put together a run. So, that's getting into the double digits already. And then that's without naming a few of the other programs that I've seen some bright things from: Penn State, Florida International, Kentucky, teams that you won't really necessarily think of. Louisville or Charlotte at Boston College, although they're quite young, so maybe not for them the list. But there's a number of programs that are having great seasons, and I'm curious to see what helps them pull through at the end of the season, or what's helped them pull through as the sort of the business end of the season arrives.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting, and we got the regular season wrapping up, but then you got the conference tournament, and then Selection Monday will be here before we know it, and we find out where everybody's going and where is seated. And I know you're following it very closely. Travis Clark, Travis, tell the audience where they can find your work online and the great work that you all do at TopDrawerSoccer.com.
Sure, you can just check us out at TopDrawerSoccer.com. We do tons of content covering everything from what you mentioned at the top of the show. College soccer, men's or women's, girls, boys, youth club soccer, youth national team stuff with the U.S., lots of different stuff. We have a podcast. Search Top Drawer Soccer Show on wherever you get your pods, and you should be able to find it. And you can follow us on social media at Top Drawer Soccer.
Travis, great stuff. I enjoy your work. We may try to get you back on before Selection Monday or even afterwards to kind of get your reaction on this, as obviously a lot of UCF fans are following this closely with the incredible year that Coach Calabrese and the team is having. Thanks so much for taking the time during the busy schedule, and we'll definitely try to get you on down the road here in the near future.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
And thanks again to Travis Clark for joining us here on the show. We hope to have him on maybe potentially before the selection show Monday, the week before, or maybe after it for a reaction. You can follow Top Drawer Soccer at Top Drawer Soccer on Twitter as well, and he's on Twitter as well. He's on there as well, Travis M. Clark on Twitter. He is the go-to, covers all the scenes in soccer. And, Jeff, the big news from that interview, as you heard, right now he's got in his projections UCF as a number 4 national seed for the NCAA tournament. Now, remember, as he explained, it's a 48-team field, not 64. So the tops, you have a certain amount of seeds. The top 16 would get a bye into the first round like UCF did last year into the second round. The big thing about that number 4 seed and why that is important, if UCF were to be the number 4 seed like Travis has them right now and how he explained how they can get there, that means UCF would play every NCAA tournament match at home at the complex up until the College Cup. That's a big difference. If for example, if you're the 5 seed, you would have to go on the road in the quarterfinals. So that's very significant. Unbelievable that we're saying that about this program, Jeffrey. But this is historic in a lot of ways.
Tremendous for the program, and what a job that Scott Calabrese has done. I went back and we'll move on after this, but I went back and I looked at their record under him, and going back to 2 years ago. Remember 2 years ago in 2017, they had their home opener canceled twice because of storms. One of them was because of a thunderstorm that just rolled in and blew, but the other one was because of a hurricane. So their home opener got pushed back to October 5th, 2017, and it was against Stetson. Okay, so nice little bookends for you here. Since that home opener in Scott Calabrese's first year, October 5th, 2017, a victory by UCF over Stetson, UCF men's soccer is 31-5-6. 31-5-6. 31 wins in 42 matches. It really is spectacular when you think about what they have done.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, over the last several couple of years. I mean, it's and a tremendous credit to what they've done. And wow, it just feels like, and even Mark Daniels was tweeting about it last night. He says this team, what a streak, truly has a roster that can win a title, not just conference. ...
Well, and as Travis, and by the way, as Travis mentioned, this is not like going to be the swan song, if you will. I mean, he's talked about how impressed he is with this coaching staff and how they find players and recruit. So the pipeline, he's built a national program here.
Yeah,
it's
we're
unbelievable.
just getting started. Just getting started. That's the scary part, I think, if you're the rest of the American and around the country, especially in the Southeast region. It's really something to see, and enough talent right now that boy. Could they get to the College Cup? Last year, it's so tough. Soccer's such a cruel game. We saw what happened last year, right? So,
second round, you outplayed Lipscomb, but Lipscomb got the victory.
And Lipscomb got the goal and got the win. So, it's right now, it's so hard. It's
overtime, no less.
Yeah,
that's the other thing that's what makes me nervous, Jeffrey. This team likes to play in overtime. We've had now, I believe it's 8 of the 16 matches, men and women, have been played at the complex, have gone to overtime.
I don't know if we can handle that, man. But
right.
one thing at a time, and it's going to start with what's basically a game against NCAA caliber opponent in Memphis on Friday, November 1st at 7. And again, like you said, that has been picked up by the American Digital Network, so you can watch it there on YouTube and Facebook. And you can follow them on Twitter at American_DN. All right, let's move over to the women's side. The women's soccer's 9-3-4 right now, but man, did they suffer a tough loss on the road at Cincy in their second to last game of the regular season. All of a sudden the offense seems to have dried up because they've scored just one goal in their last 4 games. Against Temple, UConn, ECU, and now Cincinnati. And that's with the season finale at home, the War on I-4 game coming up on Halloween night, Thursday, against South Florida. What is going on with this team? It just feels like, we knew that there would be some growing pains in trying to figure out where the scoring load was going to come from after the losses that they suffered from last year. But man, this is a heck of a time for that to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just been tough. 1 goal they've scored in the last 4 matches in the conference, and tough to win without when you don't score. Real simple as that. And they've been good defensively, up young, and that's just one of those things where you just wonder if some players have lost confidence, if they're pressing. Kristen Scott got the goal in the victory against East Carolina, but then they just couldn't. They hit the post a couple times against Cincinnati in the loss, and unfortunately now, for their standpoint, they're not going to get the bye. Memphis and South Florida are going to get the bye for the conference championship in women's soccer. UCF's going to have to play the quarterfinal game. Now, they will get to host that. They have locked that up. That'll be Sunday at 1 o'clock, but they got the big match against USF on Thursday, and really they're playing spoiler. South Florida still has a shot to win the regular season title. They're a point behind Memphis. What is it? What a year, by the way, for Memphis. Football hosting game day. You got men's soccer in the mix for the conference title, and women's soccer have been a top 15, top 25 team all year. Could host a conference tournament. Life's good, I guess, if you're Jeff Brightwell right now.
Yeah, pour one out for our buddy Jeff Brightwell up in Memphis, man. What a year for him. Unbelievable. Anyway, yeah, go ahead.
And I think they're hosting the cross-country championship or something like that, too. He's everywhere. But anyway, so South Florida is still trying to play for the conference championship. UCF's going to try to play the spoiler role here and try to maybe move up to a 3 seed in the tournament. Right now, they're kind of in the 4. It's too – I'm not going to go into all the scenarios. It's too complicated to see, who they could play on Sunday and what seed. It's too complicated because there's too many scenarios. But I think UCF, this is a match where, it's the rivalry match. 6 points on the line for the War on I-4 trophy. to the winner. And I think this is a match you've got to use to build some confidence going into the conference tournament, because they're going to have to win the conference tournament, Jeffrey, to get to the NCAA tournament at this point.
Yeah, and even with that respectable, record of 9-3-4, it's been the draws that have hurt them. I mean, the two scoreless draws against Temple and UConn, I think they look back at that and they just got to shake their head. And that's, I'm glad you brought up the point about the first round of the tournament, because the tournament format for soccer is different this year than it has been in the past. They voted in a little bit of a change. Top 2 seeds get byes. The semifinal and final are at the home of are at the home stadium of the number 1 seed, the number 1 team in the regular season, and the semifinals are on Thursday, November 7th, and the finals are on Sunday, November the 10th. Now, the first round is played at the campus sites of the higher seeds that didn't get the byes. So you have the 3 versus the 6 at the 3 on Sunday, November 3rd, and the 4 versus the 5 at the 4 that same day. So that's kind of rough to me if you don't get that bye. And I think, and the reason why the coaches do this, and this is one of the things that Todd Dagenet explained actually in volleyball, the whole point is for the American in the Olympic sports is to make the path for your best teams that much easier. So you're forcing if you're 3 to 6, you got to travel and then travel again. If you win. So that's going to put some wear on you. Yeah, you got 4 days in between the first round and the semis, but at the end of the season, you're tired, everybody's hurt, and then you got to hop on a plane and you don't know where you're going to go, and then you find out, okay, we're going to go here, and and what's your reward for winning that game? Oh, another bus trip. So in that respect, I from a conference perspective, it's good for the conference because you get the best teams playing the best teams at the end, and you make it easier for the teams that have rewarded themselves with their regular season performance. But on the other hand, if you're UCF and you're kind of hovering in, that 5-3-4-5 area, right. Man, that's a brutal path, isn't it?
yeah, no, it is. I mean, they're going to be the 3 seed or a 4 seed. So, again, first things first, you play South Florida. And the weird way is they could, in a way, decide which side of the bracket they're going to be in based on the South Florida result, although they're going to go all out. This is a rivalry match, but it is interesting. To me, Jeffrey, the biggest thing is, can they get a goal early on and just feel good about themselves offensively? Yeah. Everything else is fine. Yeah, because defensively, they've been tremendous. Delisle's been great at goal. They're a dangerous team. They have the ability. It's just offensively, they just can't find it right now. And, I think some of it is mental. You remember, this is a young roster, and I think there's some – when you're young and you don't see the ball in the back end of the net in a while, you kind of lose confidence and then you kind of press a little bit. So that's why I think this match with South Florida is very important to gain some momentum going into your hosting on Sunday against whoever you play and start this run that you're going to have to make. Yeah.
And like we said, 6 p.m. Halloween night, you can go trick-or-treating at the UCF Soccer Complex and see the War on I-4. And then this coming Sunday is that first round game. I know you said you didn't want to get into the scenarios, and they are too complicated. But right now, at this moment in time, UCF would play, I believe, SMU. It looks like in the 4-5. All right. So, but it could be Houston. It could, and then we're talking about ties. UConn and Temple are basically a half a game back in that respect. Trying to figure out that whole thing between the bottom 6. You got the bottom 6 teams in the American right now. You have 2 at 3 and 5. You have 3 at 2, 5 and 1, and you have 1 at 2 and 6. So it's a mess, and like I said, we're not going to get into it right now. It would be SMU, but it could not be SMU. So.
Just follow the American Oregon. Follow us on social media. We'll tell you what the scenarios, how they play out.
We'll figure it all out. That's right. That's why you subscribe to this podcast, is we do all the legwork for you. Volleyball. All right. Now we're coming down the stretch. 6 home matches to go. Knights sweep their weekend against Houston and Tulane. They swept Houston, and then they beat Tulane in 4 on the home floor. And McKenna Melville, great once again. 32 kills total in both matches. Ali Sable is great against Tulane. She added 11 kills, and so did Anne-Marie Watson. And Mackenzie Kuchmaner won Conference Honors Defensive Player of the Week. How about the grad transfer from Waxhaw, North Carolina, coming up big for the Knights in volleyball? This is a big weekend coming up for the Knights, too, because now they have their War on I-4 on Friday night, November the 1st at 7 against South Florida at home. That's a big night. It's a split weekend because the Knights then have to go to Dallas on Sunday to play SMU. But as far as the home match against South Florida is concerned, it's the Volleyball, annual Volleyball, a tradition that goes back to Todd Dagenet's first year. War on I-4, and it's also Alumni Weekend, and UCF has announced that that they will honor Renata Menchikova this year in their in the Ring of Honor. Renata Menchikova, going back to the 90s, she is still UCF's all-time kills leader. We thought that what we've seen from McKenna Melville is something. Well, Renata had 2,151 kills in her time at UCF. Holds the record for single kills in a game with 42, and also has the top 5 single game marks of all time. This is back in the ASUN days. She was the ASUN Player of the Year in 1996, and it's going to be great to see her back and be recognized for what she did. And then nonetheless, you still have what's going on the floor, which for UCF volleyball is key right now because the East Division. Remember, volleyball is in divisions now. It's a 2-team race. There's UCF and Cincinnati at 9-1. And then there's everybody else no better than 3-7. So that's where it is. But Cincinnati has that tiebreaker. South Florida's last at 1-9. All right, but it is War on I-4. You're going to get there. You know that they're going to give you your best shot. The deal for UCF right now is essentially this: you want to take care of South Florida and then go on the road and take care of SMU, because SMU right now is second in the West behind Houston, so they're pretty good. They're 14-6. UCF is 16-6 overall. And then the last 4 matches are home for ECU and Cincinnati, and the Cincinnati match is going to be the big one next weekend. And you got to be careful that you don't look too forward to that one if you're UCF, because if you beat Cincinnati, that nullifies the head-to-head tiebreaker. So then you go to the full tiebreaker, which I'm not sure exactly what the full tiebreakers are, but we'll have to double-check that. But if you're UCF, again, this is why it's key. You want to be you want to win that East Division because, again, like we talked about earlier this season, the conference tournament format has changed. Well, for one thing, we have one. There never used to be a conference tournament for UCF for the American in volleyball, but now they have one, and UCF is hosting it by virtue of the fact that they were last year's champion. But in addition to that, the division champions get the bye. It's a 6-team field, just like soccer, except you don't go on the road for the first round. All 6 teams come to one site, and it's played over 3 days. You don't want to have to play that 3 days in a row in order to win the conference championship. You want to be able to rest yourself that extra day before you play a quality opponent, be it whoever that they get in the first round. The good news is for UCF is even, regardless of whatever happens with that, their RPI is very strong right now, Eric. They're at 27. They actually moved up a little bit. So that RPI is key because that keeps them squarely in the hunt for an at-large bid, regardless of what happens. But and that RPI is definitely going to strengthen once we get to the tournament, because you're likely going to be playing some teams in the top 100, and that's going to help out the RPI as well. It might fluctuate a little bit.
Which is the reason why they brought the tournament, right? Isn't that the reason why they brought the tournament in?
Well, it was kind of a compromise, and Todd told me the story about this, and I think it's actually fascinating because he and some of the other veteran coaches in the league, they don't want the conference tournament because they want the best team in the regular season to move on to get that automatic bid, because that's what's best for the conference. But some of the teams that struggle in the conference every year is like, well, we want a shot at this, and we kind of want a second shot at it because you guys are probably going to get in anyway on at-large bids, and we're kind of stuck here. We want, we can't really grow our program because we don't really have a shot, every year unless something goes absolutely totally crazy. So there was a compromise that was struck. The other coaches got the votes to get the conference tournament, but as a nod to the coaches who were holding out, the field was small, 6 teams, and that ensures that if you have to play in the conference tournament and you're one of the top 2 teams, you're going to be rewarded one way or the other. If you lose, you're still going to get some help in the RPI because you'll likely be playing a team in the top 100, most likely the top 75 or top 50. So, everyone kind of has to, I get both sides of the argument. I'm kind of nostalgic for the old days of the A-Sun volleyball tournament because those tournaments were fun when UCF was hosting them every year. But I also get where Coach Dagenet is coming from with, in terms of, preserving, your energy heading into that tournament. It worked out for UCF last year, but then they went to the tournament and had some injuries. So, or into the NCAA tournament, had some injuries. And this year, who knows if things go haywire a little bit, like what if they lose to Cincinnati in that game at home? Well, then, they're going to have to win the tournament to get in. So, in that respect, UCF, if it was under the old rules, would have been eliminated. So, I don't know, man. It's tough. I get both sides of the argument, though. It's and I personally lean toward having that conference tournament because it does give you that second chance. If you feel like you lose one match in like early October, all of a sudden you're out. No, I don't think that should be quite. There are some good teams that and especially with the way the NCAA committee works. I mean, for some reason they still think the Americans a 1, maybe 2 bid league when it's a lot stronger than that. I mean, I think there should be probably at least 2, maybe 3 this year coming from the American.
Well, it's definitely going to get 2. I think UCF and Cincinnati are going to get in.
Certainly. I'm not a fan of the. I'm not a fan of the division thing. I know why they did it because you lose a weekend of play.
Well, is that going to go away now with UConn leaving? I'm wondering. Like, is that going to?
That's a good question. I think I haven't heard anything on that.
Got time to ask.
We got time to. I don't think the conference has figured it out yet. I think probably by now the coaches are like so locked in on coaching that like we'll worry about that stuff later.
True. I mean, we're really spending like Coach Dagenet right now would be telling both of us like, guys,
shut up. I got a match to coach.
Yeah, that's literally that's what he told me prior to the Tulane match last week. So they're locked in on this match, and that's what they got to worry about. And that's all you got to worry about is worry about this weekend because you know what? You're right. In this league, you never know. Who would have thought Cincinnati? When UCF lost them, who would have thought they would have dropped the match that they did to pull even with UCF? So you just never know in this league. And you're right, that 4-9-4 is going to be emotional and going on the road to SMU's. That's a quick turnaround, too. That's not a favorable scheduling-wise. So let's just see what happens this weekend. And then hopefully next week on our show here, we can go more in-depth on perhaps that big match against Cincinnati.
By the way, it was Tulane who actually swept Houston, or actually swept Cincinnati at Tulane. And boy, isn't that funny how, like, for some reason, it feels like every year in this conference, volleyball and football mirror each other. Here we are once again. UCF needs Cincinnati to lose twice.
Difference is here, UCF can take care
has
of
a little bit of control on that. Yeah, that's true. So I don't know. It's again, this is we're approaching November. This is the stretch run for these sports, man. It's going to start to get wild, and we will be with you throughout the entire thing here at the Black and Gold Banneret and the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Elo, what do you have coming up? I know we had, I'm so sorry. I owe you a public apology because I've been so busy with trying to move, and both my kids are sick, and I forgot to get your 3 stars up. So we have a belated 3 stars from a week ago that's up now, and then you got 3 stars coming this week, right?
But you're assisting me on that one big time though this week to make up for it because I'm pretty occupied. I'll be at the UCF USF women's soccer match on Halloween. I will be dressed up as a sideline reporter for that match on the digital network. So that's
where do you have to go for that costume?
Whatever, sideline reporter wearing some gear in my headset
closet.
or something. Who knows what they'll have for me? But they'll have something. So I'll be there Thursday. And then Friday, our own Brian Murphy. That's why he's not with us on this segment, because he's already geared up for fall ball, UCF Stetson baseball on Friday night to go along with
baseball.
the volleyball match that you're going to be at. And, oh, by the way, we got the big men's soccer match during that night, which is going to be wild. And then Saturday, me and Murph will be at the football game against Houston, noon kickoff. I know you guys went in depth on that. Then Sunday, I'll be at the women's soccer match. UCF's going to play somebody at 1 o'clock, so we'll see who they play and all that in the conference tournament, single elimination. So point is, I'm pretty busy, Jeffrey. That's busy.
Well, you know what we had the other day? We had the actual sports equinox where we had, regular season or postseason games from all 4 major pro sports playing the same time. Well, right now we're in the college sports equinox where we have the fall and winter sports crossover. It's the fall sports equinox for college sports. Because basketball is starting up. Don't forget.
Yeah, and we got our special coming up, right?
Yep, we're recording our basketball special later this week, and women's basketball starts on Wednesday, November 6th against Pittsburgh. That's an 11 a.m. tip. I will be there for that doing PA, and Jeremy Brenner is also going to be there as well. I'll be there. He'll be following. Jeremy will be following UCF women's basketball all season. That's going to be his beat now. So.
Nice.
We're happy to have him on board doing it. He's really excited to do it. I know that how much he loves covering Coach Abe and the team and KK and everybody. So that'll be a lot of fun. And
we'll have Coach Abe, by the way, on our basketball special.
Yes, we will. Yeah, and of course we had KK Wright last week from Media Day. So I'm going to be excited to see what they do against Pittsburgh in that opener, man. You're diving right in against an ACC team right off the bat. That should be a lot of fun heading into the season. And don't forget, you can follow us always, blackandgoldbanneret.com, UCF_Banneret on Twitter, Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret for all your UCF sports needs. We are part of SB Nation and a proud member of the SB Nation Network, where we are celebrating, Eric Lopez, just over 1 year since we joined the network. And I wanted to thank all the folks that have helped us out over there in Washington and New York, and most of all, you guys, the fans, for hopping on board and realizing what we've been doing and supporting what we've been doing, because we do it for you. We enjoy covering these. We do it for you. We do it for the coaches. We do it for the athletes. We do it for all of our friends inside and outside our UCF orbit. And it's been a blast, and we're going to continue to getting better at it. And I hope you enjoy it. So. For Eric, by the way, big thanks once again to Brian Murphy for earlier. Thanks to Dustin and Sam from the Scott and Holman Podcast. Make sure you follow them at SH Podcast and that's PAWD Podcast. Get it? They're great. Make sure you follow them for anything having to do with Houston. And again, thanks to you, the listeners, for listening in on the show. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. For Eric, I'm Jeff. Talk to you later.